Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to you all to the ninth session of the second day international virtual conference on gender studies. Myself, Gauri Joy, and I'll be a moderator for this session. Now, I welcome Dr. Donna Elizabeth Sam, Assistant Professor, Department of English, BCM College, Atom, Kerala, India. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome all the participants to this session. The participants are Dr. Divya P, Miss Rashi, Dr. Sanosh Sharma and Mr. Dinesh Purohit, and Miss Kriti Rani. So here are few guidelines that the participants should keep in mind. Participants are requested to keep a time limit of 10 to 12 minutes for their presentation, and you are also requested to post your questions in the bit for the Q&A session in the chat box. Over to you, Donna ma'am.
Thank you, Gauri. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here chairing the ninth technical session of the three-day international virtual conference on gender studies. I'm sure you've been all enlightened by all the previous paper presentations that have been done so far. And today, as I'm aware, we have four paper presenters for us in this section. And without much introduction, let's move on to the first paper presentation. The first paper presentation will be done by Dr. Divya P. Um, are you here, Dr. Divya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. So let me just introduce her. She is from the Higher Secondary Education Department of Kerala, and she'll be presenting a paper on, as I assume, one of the most widely read work by Chetan Bhagat. And please, Divya, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, is it visible?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of my presentation is Identity of the Self, a reading of Chetan Bhagat's One Night at the Call Center. As we all know, the term bestseller is given to Chetan Bhagat by the critics, and this particular novel, One Night at the Call Center, is one among his best. So the advancement of science and technology in recent era has women to develop a certain gradual progress and change in their status in the male-dominated society. Of course, now she has the courage to break the myth of domesticity and to come out of the four walls of her home to preserve her identity in the society and in her personal life too. In Chetan Bhagat's female characters, in his novels, the female characters are explored with new responsibilities in their identity as Indian women by modifying the traditional and domestic virtues of womanhood. So, the 21st century feminist movement has greatest impact on women's life by bringing changes on various aspects such as looking of their manners and morals and emancipation of young middle class girls and so on. So, in early period, they were entangled in a narrow world of morality, and they were restricted their life within the four walls of society. So she was lived in so many do's are they were there, and so many don'ts were there. In second sex, I quote from Simone de Beauvoir, when she becomes a young girl, the father has all over power over her. When she marries, she transfers it into to the husband. Since a wife, it is his property to property like a slave, a beast of burden, or a man can naturally have as many wives as he pleases. Nevertheless, in the present scenario, women would be free to enjoy her sexuality and able to look forward to a society. They believe not only in the right of intellectual development, but also most of them agree that marriage and maternity are the chief goals in their life. So, feminism helped women to step out of the confines of these four walls, and it also helped them to educate themselves to contribute to the society. Then I follow the concept new woman. The concept new woman is significant in this modern era that enhances her achievement in education, job, equal opportunity, life status, desires to travel around the world, and so on. So this new woman is a woman. She has awareness of her low position in the family or society, and she tries to improve her position. First, she challenges the concept, the angel in the house, and sexually scrupulous image of traditional woman. She fights against the so-called patriarchal norms and prepares to face the consequences of her choice. A new woman also emphasizes to consider her intelligence, feelings, rights as individuals. Consider her as an individual or as a unique person. She fights against the norms and the conditions of patriarchy to explore her true potential and then to fulfill urges and needs. She strongly urges her conduct more towards better human relationship without an anti-man perspective. In the novel One Night Call Center, they are struggling, these female characters are struggling to live in between the tradition and modernity. And these female characters are searching for their identity, for feminine self in the metropolitan background. So they want to become new women who break the shackles of exclusion from their male-dominated patriarchal frustrations. There are only three female characters in the novel. The first one is Priyanka, the role of the role of a new woman, and in the role of a new woman and in her new economic and social status, she gets the freedom to choose her life partner. So Priyanka and Shyam's relationship denote in the novel the changing nature of personal relationship, which is based on the impact of money rather than the emotions and sentiments to materialize relationships in the waves of consumerism. But even in the but even though she behaves as a new woman, she may have restrictions and not considered as a mere human being in the patriarchal society. However, a new woman decides to protect the self and the identity in the changing scenario of this 21st century. According to the mother's opinion, this Priyanka's mother's opinion, Shyam is worthless and not a well-settled call center guy. When she forces Shyam try to be rich, he feels humiliated and consequently the relationship comes to a breaking point. The second female character is Radhika. She is a patriarchal victim in the novel and also she tries to tries her level best to adjust with her domestic affairs and lies within the family unit and the call center profession even if she gets insults from her husband. The burden in the workload at night and disharmonious relation with her husband make her life moments neurotic and frustrated. And later in the story, she becomes sick and depressed from her husband and her mother-in-law in that patriarchal male-dominated home. She sacrificed her ambitions and dreams for the sake of her arranged marriage. The last female character in the novel is Isha Singh. She is aspiring character to achieve a modeling competition. And she dedicates her life moments to achieve her dreams. But when the novel moves on, the readers get a vivid image of her catastrophe that she has been a victim of casting couch. She is another victim of this psychological trauma at the time of modeling contract, and her miserable compromise by sleeping with a designer and his betrayal by telling her that she can't become a model due to her height that increased her pathetic plight. Instead, he sends money to her as part of his betrayal and concern. So she is an apt portrayal of soaring ambitions and unachieved targets of life, and dares to make use of her womanliness to achieve a modeling competition. So I conclude my paper. Chetan Bhagat delineates various issues in the novel, like challenging modern women, their social freedom through their politics of life, and also their status. A new woman aspires to make the family a better place to live in. She is a blend of this tradition and modernity as the image of self-fulfillment and freedom. She realizes her true essence as a human being and achieves her dream by breaking the patterns of sexuality. So, the female characters in the novel signify the modification of these traditional images of womanhood, the relationship, and in the socio-ethical issues. And these characters are struggling to live as new women in the world of technocrats and in metropolitan cities by breaking the shackles of patriarchal norms. So, the identity of their self, that's a complex structure in the various phases of women's life, even in this 21st century. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, you are. There is an issue with her net. She'll join soon.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay in between. I hope I'm audible and visible now. Thank you, Ms. Divya, for the presentation. I just, got interrupted the last note was completed. Nevertheless, it was a wonderful paper. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I liked how you framed the idea of a new woman as is witnessed in Chetan Bhagat's novel. My question is, do you find idea of the new woman being reflected in his other works? His other works being Between Life to My Life or Five.
Sorry, ma'am, it's not audible.
Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. My question is, do you think that the concept or the idea of a new woman is found in Chetan Bhagat's other works also? For example, Five Point Someone or Two States.
Is there any difference that what you are asking?
I'm asking,
Comparing with the other?
yeah. Can you?
Ma'am, your voice is breaking and it's not clear. I think you have net issue there.
I'm sorry. It seems to
Well, Divya, she was asking whether you can find the concept of the other woman in other novels of Chetan Bhagat as well, or is it just in this particular novel?
Ma'am, I haven't read all the novels, but uh,
Okay, Donna, you can continue.
yeah, yeah. I hope I am audible and it is clear. I'm sorry if there are any interruptions in between. Tulsi?
You're audible now.
Okay, okay, thank you. All right.
okay, ma'am, thank
Yeah.
you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make an observation or comment or even ask a question to Ms. Divya? Okay, I guess not. Thank you, Divya, for the paper presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so let's move on to the second paper presentation. The second paper will be presented by Ms. Rashi. Yeah, she is here. I understand that she is a PhD scholar at DU, Delhi University. And from reading the title, I've understood she will also be analyzing the concept of new women, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Rashi, over to you.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, so the title of my paper is Resisting Patriarchy Placidly, Analyzing New Women in Rama Mehta's Inside the Haveli. I'll start my paper with a quote. The point of women's liberation is not to stand at the door of the male world, beating our fist and crying, "Let me in, damn you, let me in." But the point is to walk away from the world and concentrate on creating a new woman. Patriarchy is a social structure in which the role of male as the chief authority is vital. It denotes to a system where men have power over women, children, and possessions. As an institution of male rule and privilege, patriarchy is reliant on female subservience, literally meaning rule of fathers. The term patriarchy was primarily used to refer to autocratic rule by the male head of a family. However, in recent times, it usually refers to social systems in which authority is primarily held by adult men. Most forms of feminism illustrate patriarchy as an unfair and unjust social system, to be precise, oppressive to women. As a feminist and political philosopher, Carol Patman pens, the patriarchal construction of the difference between masculinity and femininity is the political difference between liberty and oppression. According to majority of feminist theories, however, the notion of patriarchy often comprises all the social mechanisms that reproduce and employ male domination over female. Majority of sociologists primarily discard biological justifications of patriarchy and put up with the idea that social and cultural conditioning is predominantly liable for instituting male and female gender roles. As per standard sociological theory, patriarchy is the outcome of sociological constructions that are passed down from generation to generation. These constructions are most evident in societies with traditional cultures and beliefs and less economic development. Nevertheless, gender messages carried forward by family, mass media, and other institutions chiefly favor males having a dominant status. Some sociobiologists, such as Stephen Goldberg, discusses that social behavior is principally determined by genetics and that patriarchy comes into being more as a result of innate biology than social conditioning. He also states that patriarchy is a universal feature of human culture. Therefore, any attempt to describe patriarchy describes the reason for the subordination of women since time immemorial and its bearing on the future and success in life. Patriarchy not only explicates how our society functions, but also as to how it controls women. But the women's liberation movement of the late 1960s in the first world empowered men with self assurance as never before. Women writers like Kate Millett, Erica Jong, Diane Johnson, and Marilyn French questioned and overruled conventional imageries of women. The new woman has emerged because of the impact of feminism, which infers the contention of human rights by women who have dismantled the myth proliferated by patriarchy that women are fragile, submissive, helpless, docile, and weak, and they need security by men. The roots of feminism lie in the distant past when women were viewed inferior to men, both physically and intellectually. Feminist movement, although initiated and developed in the West, but its presence can be felt as well as seen across the world, including India. It has created consciousness amongst women about their rights. The new woman does not want to adapt her traditional image any longer. Age long suppression and suffering in every form has forced her to take up the clubs against the patriarchal society to resist unfairness meted out to them. Formerly, women were left without the privilege of education while men were given all the amenities and they enjoyed all privileges in every spheres of human activity. Women were simply the object of pleasure, besides providing emotional satisfaction to her husband and other members of the family. Echoes of feminism are visible in Indian writings in English, and subsequently, women have started resisting patriarchy through their writings. It was precise. Sorry, it was precisely after the feminist movements and in the later part of the 20th century that women writers such as Anita Desai, Namita Gokhale, Bharati Mukherjee, Kamla Markande, Nayantara Sehgal, Shashi Deshpande, Rama Mehta, and Manju Kapoor took up women's subjects through their writings with a view to secure some respect and self worth to women who were either mistreated or marginalized by the patriarchal socio cultural setup. The aforementioned women writers have depicted their women protagonists protesting against patriarchy, and eventually emerging as a new woman. In the present paper, an attempt has been made to show how the female protagonist named Geeta of Rama Mehta's novel Inside the Haveli fights against all odds to transform herself from mere caricature to a resilient character who ultimately emerge as a new woman after resisting the patriarchal norms peacefully. Rama Mehta's Inside the Haveli has been written in late 70s when the society was witnessing the birth of consciousness as the doors were opened by freedom struggle and the feminist movements across the globe. The novel is greeted as a modern classic about a liberated and an independent woman struggle to keep hold of her identity in a traditional and patriarchal society. Geeta, who is an educated and cheerful Bombay girl, arrives into a conventional family and shortly finds herself in Parda, in her husband's ancestral Haveli. Faced with this and other traditions that intimidate her to find independence and broad minded views, Geeta fights to uphold the modern values that she has always lived by. Inside the Haveli is the story of how Geeta is able to carve out an identity for herself in the new and apparently stuffy atmosphere that she has been plunged into. The novel convincingly portrays the status of women in post feudal and regional India and also diligent efforts of Geeta to turn the tables without harming anyone. She is already enlightened and makes earnest and persistent efforts which eventually bring a change, and she emerges as the new woman in her own way. Inside the Haveli has several layers of themes, and each of them is likely to be examined exclusively. The maiden reading of the novel show it as a sociological study of the progressively changing status of the new women in India owing to her educational development and economic independence. The novel can also be read as a feminist text with a young and well educated girl as the protagonist. Prominently, the novel is a layered study of the psyche of a female protagonist who emerges as a new woman in her own way without literally violating the patriarchal blockades. It very strongly mirrors the intellectuality of the feminine world as well. The novel also emphasizes on women as a normal, hale, and hearty human being with strong spiritual depth and a moral and intellectual vision who has the capability to stand against all odds in life and pave way for her own destiny. It also presents a moving image of a woman who weaves the web of her existence with the threads of willpower and endurance. The apex of Gita's story is a triumph in setting up a school for the women and children of the Haveli. The foremost objective of Rama Mehta in writing this novel seems to highlight the Indian traditions. She very persuasively poses a real life crisis for Geeta, a very well educated girl from Bombay, who after her marriage comes to live in a Haveli in Udaipur and who is expected to face the ordeal of traditional living. The component of the new woman is in Geeta is her steadfastness to appreciate the poise, somberness, and authority of traditions, and her education and Western views nowhere come in her way as a peril to her resolution. Geeta never becomes a hand puppet in the hands of old traditions of the Haveli, as she feels that these traditions are time and again well preserved with the use of force and the lack of education which exploit the growth of an individual. Geeta is not the type of a protagonist who sticks to her identity and wins her freedom by protesting or rebelling against the age old traditions of the Haveli, but she implements her plans of identity very sensibly in her, and her education plays a crucial role in executing her mission. Geeta conveys a message in a noticeably distinctive way that in order to be modern, it is not necessary to sacrifice the cultural roots. Rather, these roots can be used to lay strong and durable grounds of modernity a la New Women. Geeta is very calm and patient under any circumstances. Being a peace lover, she never spoils the tranquility of the female and their bonds. Even after 8 years of her marriage and two children, she gets completely adjusted in the family. Despite the Parda system, her actions are no longer gawky and she is completely a changed and new Geeta. She does not worship the men folk like an uneducated and orthodox Hindu woman. In contrast, she wishes to see the best in the traditional Indian character, embodying power, valor, kindness, and compassion. She wants that Indian women must have these qualities with a little bit of freedom. She starts aiming for the freedom which she sees in the men of Haveli. She also feels that without social and intellectual freedom, women fall back on devious, narrow minded, and deceitful ways. Gita takes along light to the Haveli, which eventually promises to drive away the darkness. She feels that only education for women could guarantee social and intellectual freedom to them. Education of their daughter was not a problem as both the parents are highly educated. But inside the Haveli, the education for girls and women is never well thought of as an essential part of their development. That is why Geeta has to struggle very hard for the schooling of Sita, who is the servant girl in the Haveli. There is a strong disagreement from the males along with the females of the Haveli. And Geeta experiences depression, self doubt, and serious inner conflict. But she wins at last as a father in law finally gives the approval for Sita's schooling. The Haveli metaphor is relevant here. Quote, the rooms in the Haveli were hard to keep warm. They were too big and airy or too small, humid and dingy. Geeta had opened the tiny window in her room to let in the fresh air and the rays of the morning sun. Here, the opening of the tiny window signifies the change which would be brought about by Geeta in her new role, that is, the role of the new woman. The best part of the novel is that, in spite of being able to revolt, she chooses not to openly revolt against the traditional and patriarchal whims and fancies of the Haveli. Her education makes her the new woman in the real sense. Geeta is educated, but her education has not disarrayed her brain. She uses it as an instrument to strengthen relationships in the Haveli. The pleasant relationship that Geeta forms inside the Haveli without either surrendering her own intellectual independence or disrupting the traditions reveals her ability to use her education in a positive and in a creative manner. One of the most challenging decisions that educated women have to take is to pull out themselves from the active public and economic activity after marriage. For the responsibility of running a family, looking after the children, thus challenging the large scale programs for women's education. In the dimensions of the new woman, Geeta makes one of the most cherished contributions that educated housewives can make and which possibly no other agency can perform to kindle the light of learning, love of psychological freedom, and a habit of deciding for oneself even inside the dark rooms behind high walls of patriarchy. Geeta plays the role of the new woman with willpower and self effacement. She tackles problems like the child marriage, women education, and economic independence. Geeta is not presented as a wild and a vigorous rebel, as it would have resulted in shattering the harmony of the Haveli. The author believes in time-tested idea of marriage, so she could not have made her protagonist take such a severe and harsh step. Her protagonist shows intelligence, endurance, love, and concern for others who respond positively. Eventually, Geeta emerges as the new woman who has been able to transform the long-standing traditions. Her character seems convincing because she has a positive attitude towards life. She does not struggle for her own freedom, but for the freedom of others. And in this sense, she is undoubtedly a new woman. She knows her competencies and also knows how to tackle the situation even in adverse situations. Consequently, she finally succeeds in managing to get the desired changes employed in the Haveli. Her love and concern for others also binds the Haveli people together. She tries to build a feminine space by educating the servants' children and maidservant. The approach that Geeta embraces is that of negotiation and not transfiguration. She tries to bring out a change in tradition, and her idea of tradition is quite preventive but not completely altered. She makes it a living and livable structure rather than a space for feeling the sense of being nothing or having lost everything. Unlike the modern protagonist, who in quest of purpose and meaning in life frequently end up in isolation and breakdown, Geeta is able to direct her energies in a positive manner which brings peace to herself and her family. Henceforth, Gita is a vehicle of change. It is a sharp intelligence which brings about a great change inside the Haveli without seemingly troubling the old traditions. The novel ends on an instructive note that change is never achieved radically. On the contrary, Rama Mehta endorses that it has to be gradual and consensual. Compromise rather than rebellion is the pattern to be adopted. In the present paper, an attempt has been made to portray Gita resisting patriarchy placidly and finally emerge as a new woman. The new woman is a being in her own right. Although it is challenging to describe the new woman, she can be defined as a woman who searches for self fulfillment through self expression in an environment where there is empathy, understanding, love, and care. In this framework, Sharath Srivastav writes that, quote, the woman is new when she scrutinizes and reflects upon her position fundamentally as a woman in the scheme of things, which includes the social, moral, and spiritual fields. Unquote. The new woman is totally different from the woman who thinks of seeking equality with men, proclaiming her own personality and highlighting her rights as a woman. She is gifted with profound and rational thinking and is fully aware of the traditional values and ethics. A true and real new woman adheres to her basic values, adjusts herself according to the changing circumstances, and goes forward seeking an identity for herself. She bestows herself with new depths as she ascertains her essence as a truly empowered being. Women have consistently been socially and psychologically oppressed, sexually abused, and biologically subdued against the patriarchal structure. Any attempt by women to rise above the repressive forces rooted in the middle class margins has either been curtailed ruthlessly or ignored in the name of social dignity. But the attempts made by the Indian women fiction writers in the last 4 decades have shown the images of the new woman and her search and struggle for an identity of her own. They have depicted that a woman is an individual and not an appendage of man. She is not the other and also not an addition to a man. She is an independent being capable of uh, finding her way to freedom through trial and error. In today's changing ethos, women can play a significant role as agents of change. This is very evidently
Rashi,
portrayed in. Yes?
um, uh, sorry to interrupt, but it would be nice if you can, conclude your paper
Okay, okay.
because we're
Sure,
going beyond the allotted time. Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Okay. So, to conclude, lastly, we need to understand that patriarchy is not to be judged by the presence or absence of a few good men who respect their wives or the few bad men who treat them scruffily. It is to be seen in a whole, as demonstrated within the politics of power structure. It is the power structure that women writers take appreciation of when they write text showing choices open to women. There is an apparent tension inherent in the depiction of male female narrative, as the newfound female awareness is not easily acceptable to a society which is conditioned by patriarchy. It is thus vital to understand that the new woman of the 20th century is not just a creation of mind. Her real and noticeable presence must be recognized as society prepares itself to usher in an era of modernization. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashi. Um, it was good indeed. Your paper was quite well structured and extremely
Thank you.
detailed. Okay. But just a question that I would like to ask.
Yeah, sure.
Don't you think that the definitions of new women are again quite restrictive in its sense?
Sorry, you are not. Can you repeat the question?
Don't you
Your
think,
voice is breaking.
yeah, I'm sorry, don't you think that the idea of a new woman or the definition of a new woman is quite restrictive in itself?
Uh, no, not restricted because she is different from a modern or an emancipated woman. Uh, she is not a rebel, first of all. So I think not restricted, but yeah, she is different from a modern woman, where she wait like na she is not the contemporary woman, and
Not just,
the
I'm sorry, I'm not asking only about the character. I'm asking in general. If you
okay, in
define a
general.
new woman, right? If you're defining who a new woman is, the definition
No, I
itself,
don't think so. But there is a demarcation in like na new women, emancipated women, aberrations. So I think it is good, not restricted.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Rashi, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment? All right, okay. Thank you, Rashi, for the paper presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's move on to the third paper presentation. I believe that the third paper will be presented by Mr. Dinesh Purohit, and it is a co-authored paper along with Dr. Sanush Chandra. Both of them are from Dr. K.N. Modi University, Rajasthan. And the paper is titled as a discourse on the international legal framework to promote participation of women in the political life. Mr. Dinesh?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Very good afternoon, ma'am. And good afternoon to all the my now present over here. So I myself, Dinesh Purohit, I would like to present the paper uh, in this webinar. But before starting my presentation, ma'am, how can I share my the presentation?
Can you present your screen to us?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, can you click on the ignore button?
Ignore. Yes.
Yeah, click on that. You have to select that particular file.
Yes, ma'am. This one is a presentation PPT like no, PPT for gender justice.
Yeah, you can open that.
Okay, this is open.
Yeah, you
Now
can
it
click
is
on that.
visible, ma'am.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So first of all, I would like to thank the coordination, so organizing committee for giving such a wonderful opportunity to present my paper. So my paper presentation title is the discourse on international legal framework to promote participation of women in political life. As we know very well that the this conference is on the gender studies. So the my no, uh, I wrote the paper on the with respect to international legal perspective for the protection of the rights of the women. So before starting the presentation, first of all, as we know that the for writing the paper guidance and the support is very important. So I would like to also thank my guide like Dr. Santosh Sharma. She is my supervisor and she is also my co-author. Faculty of Law, Dr. K.N. Modi University. And I would like to also thank the chairperson, Sir Dr. Devendra Kumar Modi, sir. He is the chancellor of the Dr. K.N. Modi University. Now I will move forward for the presentation. As the Paul rightly said, the women's ability to make an impact in male-dominated institutions will be limited until they are represented in numbers large enough to have a collective voice, until they reach a critical mass. Because until the women will participate in the political spray, the equal no, there will not be a no, gender justice, because the main agenda of this no, writing the paper is to no, provide the gender justice in the political spray. As we know very well that the if we see the ratio of the women from the international perspective, that is very less in political spray, whereas the population is equivalent to the male. 49.8% is the female in all our world. And if we see the ratio of India and the in India, women ratio of the total population is a 48.8%. So, but whereas the participation of women in politics is very less in compared with the other country. Or so the now women, as we know that the women are the main assets of the society. If we trace back to the historic background, the status of the women in political area, we can now see that there are so many examples during when the if we see the Vedic period, that means Vedic period was the considered and the Rig Vedic period was considered as golden era of the women no, empowerment or the equal participation of women in the all the arena, like the be it economic, social, politics, and everywhere. And the women empowerment is considered as the fundamental aspects of the society. The enhancement of women in political life results in increased level of disparity and the increase the confidence in the state government. It will also enhance the give the more freedom, or the women will participate in the politics will directly uh, positively result in the society, because the women will not, when the legislation will frame or the any rules or regulation will frame for the welfare of the society, women will be also take the participation and make the decision for the moving the right direction. And so the main importance or significance of the participation of women in political life is to achieve the sustainable goal by 2030. This is the main significance for the participation of the women in political space. The participation of women in decision making is a democratic good in itself and break many supremacy in politics today. As we know that the in present era the participation of women is very less, so we need to more encouragement program or the enact legislation and the domestic or the international level, so the women will get women will get an opportunity to participate in the international organization or their parliament or state legislation, so that it will ultimately the benefit to the society. The representation of women in politics promotes gender parity by challenging the politics and social structure, and that continue a culture of women pure in both the public and private arena. As we know that the representation of women in politics or the private sector is very less, but now gradually the ratio of the women is increasing, no doubt. But still there are so many hurdles. The women are facing so many hurdles while they are representing in the political era, like the be it the financial, economic, or the some kind of the violence may also come into stay, like the if the women will contest the election and then the no other people, male people may not the allowed allowed the seats to the women, because of the they they were not interested to give the more the power in the hand of the women. So there are the certain factor behind the lack of the participation of women. One is that ideological factor. Ideological factor means it is one of the major factor behind the lack of the participation of the women. Now, if we see the ratio of the political leader or the member of the parliaments or the legislature, then the majority of the people members are the male dominated. And like the if we see the from the perspective of the India, then the no, Indian society is based on patriarchy system. So the most of the time the decision are taken by the male dominate, and they may not allow to participate the women in politics. Another is a political factor. Political factor is also main factor behind the lack of participation of women. It means the in the if we see the ratio of the now the if we see the ratio of women in politics, then most of the women who are the leader in the or the member of the parties are the background from the politics, who has no, those who have already the family member male member are already in the parliament or the no, law legislation or the other international organization like the UN, etc. And the social factor is also one of the another factor, and the lack of the participation of the women. And economic, we know very well that the no, economic is also factor for the participation, because the we need the financially strong, because the when we fight the election or the no, represent the as a political leader of any state or the any nation, then the financially strong is also required for the no, contest the election or the no, uh, not become the member of the any political party or the organization. Now there are so many, when the women the represent or the participate in the politics, but then they are the some another causes like the some the violence are the going against the legislator or the member of the Lok Sabha Parliament or the legislature, or the another political party, like the psychological violence. Psychological violence means what the some political opposite party or leader or the some the maybe the member same member party, they may give the threat to the women, so they will try to not to join the political party or not to contest the election of the no, parliament or legislature of the country. Another one is sexual violence. Sometimes the sexual violence, like the sexual harassment, this kind of the violence may come while the women will participate in the politics. So this is the main. There are main. These are the main violence against women are going on against the women, and they participate in the political life. And economic violence, we know that they may are not allowed the they may not support the financially for the contesting the election, or that they may not allowed to stay in the same when if they will contest the election of the nation. Next one is that this is the data I collect from the inter parliamentary union. This is the data of the 2021. The range I frame the table. So we can see here that I can again collect the data of the top 10 countries where the ratio, how many percentage is the women are representing in the parliament or the parliament. Like the Rwanda is the country where the 61.3% women are participating in the political arena. And second one is Cuba, and India rank is very low, 147. Uh, this data is the when the this is the data collect is of the 2019 Parliament general election of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So we see that there is only 14.2% the women are participating in the Lok Sabha, and the 11.2% women are participating the becoming member in the Rajya Sabha. So the ratio of the women is very less. Now I also include the international legislation for the protection of the political rights of the women. The main issue of the participation of the women in politics is to eradicate the gender parity or gender disparity among the male and the female. So this is a main agenda for this region. The United Nations also framed so many legislation for the protection of the rights of the women, like the United Nations Charter also state that the gender equality is the main concern for the protection of the rights of the women and the men and the international space, like the United Nations also drafted United Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 for the protection of the rights. Article 3 clearly states that there should not be any kind of discrimination against a person on the basis of the sex, race, color, and place of birth. And the Article 4 states that no, uh, all the people, male and female, both will get an equal opportunity to participate in the political life. And there is one another. There are so many conventions or the covenants or other international declaration for the protection of the rights of women. When the first legislation or the Convention on the Political Rights of Women, it was drafted in 1953 for the protection of the rights of the women, because the main agenda of the drafting or the enactment of this covenant was to implement the principle of equality of the rights for the men and women in all the in global arena. The convention states that all the people have the right to take part in the government of their state directly and indirectly, and freely elected and representative have equal right to access a public service in the nation. And the women articles, you know, one state that the women shall be entitled to franchise in both equal terms with men. You know, both the men and women have the equal right to franchise the vote, the election of the state or the you know at the and local bodies as well. So this was the main agenda or the object of the for the adopting of the enactment of the legislation. Another is the declaration of elimination of the all discrimination against the women. This declaration was drafted in 1967 by United Nations organization. The agenda of this declaration was to against the eliminate or eradicate the all kind of discrimination, include the like we have seen that the gender discrimination is one of the main cause for the lack of the participation of the women in political era. So, and apart from it, there are so many other causes like the social and economic factor are also there. So the United Nations wanted to eradicate or the remove this kind of the elimination discrimination against women. And thereafter, again in 1979, another covenant was adopted, that is the elimination of the all forms of discrimination against women. The main object of this covenant is to protect the rights and prevent the discrimination against the women around the world. So this is the main agenda. But although there are so many legislation, but still there are so many hurdles for the less representation of women in the political life. There is one other. So these are the international legislation. Now I would like to conclude my the paper presentation. So although the women are struggling for the protection of the rights and equal participation of the women in the parliament or the state legislation or local body, but there are so many problems in this era. But the representation of women in political life is a multi-dimensional approach. And to prevent the violence against political leaders and harassment against the women in elections should be priority. This should be priority, sir. There should not be any kind of harassment or the violence against the women. And the country should provide education to poor section of the women and all efforts to be made for training women leaders and improve the women's skills to participate actively in polls as candidate and vote. So all the women get the parts, right to contest the election and the right to vote in the political, the election of the parliament or the local body. I would like to suggest for the improvements on the protection of the rights of women. First is that all the nation must implement the legislation for the equal participation of women in political life. We know that almost all the countries have the different constitution, and there are so many other international legislation for the protection of the rights of the political rights of women. So these need to implement it. Unless we implement this legislation, we cannot achieve the sustainable goal by 2030. So, unless, so this remain Uh, the problem for the lack of implementation of legislation. Next one is the political party must reserve 50% of seats for the female at the time of the election of the parliament of their nation. Like for example, in India, there is also 33% reservation for the women in the local bodies like the Panchayat Raj election and municipality election. And for the reservation of women and the parliament or legislation of state, bill is pending till no, since the 2008. Why this bill is pending? Because of the lack of the no, representation of women in parliament. Because the male, most of the people, there are some political leaders, they are not interested to not support the equal participation of women. Like
Mr.
the
Dinesh,
yes, ma'am.
can you kindly conclude your paper?
Yeah, I will conclude mine within 1 minute. Okay, last my suggestion is that all the parties must frame this norm and regulation for the equal participation of women and men for this on the post and to equal allocation of seat in general election of the nation. So this is my suggestion for the improvement or the more improvement or the participation of women in the political life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dinesh. The paper was well researched with your suggestions also. I assume that this is part of your doctoral research work.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to ask a question or make an observation or a comment? Okay. Dinesh, just one simple question.
Yes,
In
ma'am.
one of your slides, you had mentioned that there are four factors which have contributed to the lack of participation of women in political life, right?
Yeah,
Ideological, political, social, and economical. Uh,
yeah,
do you think out of the four, is
yeah.
there, or do you think which is that one single factor which dominates the other factors?
I think if we see the main from the India perspective, then I think the ideological factor is the main factor behind the lack of the participation of the women. And second one is the main the political factor. This
Okay,
is also no hurdle for the no, lack of the participation of women in India.
okay,
Although now the gradually improving the ratio of the women in politics, no politics, but still the ratio is very less in compared with the other countries like the
okay,
Rwanda.
okay. So it's all about changing our ideology and perception, right?
Yeah, of course, we need to change it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's move on to the last and the fourth paper for today. Um,
Thank you
the
so much.
next paper presenter is Smriti Rani. She is a research scholar from Patliputra University in Bihar, Patna. Um, Smriti, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Over to you.
Okay, ma'am. Hello, everyone. My paper presentation, the title of my paper is Hushed Discrimination Against LGBT Community, a Community of Silence. I want to discuss that sexual orientation is a discussion that has rarely been discussed openly. If we talk about India, the society never opens about it, and neither does it wants to let others open. The history of India's cultural heritage is very vast and dignified. We, as a human, believe that what we will show to the society will be our personality. The least value we give is to ourselves and what makes us happy. But this trauma of not living the reality kills the thought process of the human mind. Our general concept is to live life as per the rules of society. Any human being who is not happy from the inside cannot make a society full of happiness. When I am talking about inner peace, it is about the peace which gives us the freedom to be what we want to be. What we want to be is not only based on our profession and how much money we earn, it is also based on what our sexual orientation is and what we believe our gender should be. Sometimes God makes us something, but we don't feel comfortable in that attire. For instance, biologically being a boy and mentally a girl. Sometimes God makes some of us, different than most of the others, like eunuchs. The question here is, what are the types of people and what is their gender? What is the relation of gender with our identity? On the other hand, it seems that I am asking the wrong question, the typical ones. The question should never be about gender and its relation with identity, because our fundamental way of deciding gender is not perfect. We created two classes, male and female. The third gender is the one who is neither male nor female. We left them without any classification. This is the fundamental blunder of gender classification. When these three classes are not perfectly fit in what we believe in as society, it is nearly impossible to make a clean classification of those who physically come either in a male or female category, but cerebrally they believe themselves as otherwise. It is very hard to decipher the gender type, but what we can do is we can accept each and every color of sexual orientation, whether it be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or anything that anyone wants to be. We should be comfortable in the society we are living in. The history of sexually different and gender different people is proof of their place in our society. The Hindu Dharma always gives place to people who are not men or women. But after decades of years passing by, we still have many problems and confusions about them. We don't treat them as our own species. It is a disease for the society and for the culture vultures. And according to them, these LGBT community, they must be hushed no matter what. When we go through the history of the Hindu religion, we can see words like Ardhanarishwar for Lord Shiva. It was not just an incarnation, it was place for transgender. To quote, Ardhanarishwar form is an androgynous composite of Shiva and goddess Parvati. Unquote. Krishna as Mohini is also a eunuch. When they were there in Puran and Mahabharat, their place was better than what it is now. Religion has nothing to do with our sexual orientation. Love is the creation of God, and love is the only message in every religion. There is no mention of hate for those who are not straight. Now, where is this discrimination coming from? This should be the question. There is a discrimination against them not only in India, but also in a developed country like America. Some are helpless about what they are, but some people have nothing to do with the helplessness when it comes to their sexual orientation. They are those people who fall in love with the same gender ones. Now, it should not be seen as something disgusting or dangerous. Those who are straight show their apathy towards them. The choice of the workplace depends on who will accept them as LGBT. Genius and experts either hide their orientation or leave their respective jobs just because they are not what we consider as standard. There is a survey of 2017 done among the American population suggests that 1 in 4 people report experiencing discrimination. This equation is for the country which is developed. Hard to imagine what are the situation of developing and Gulf countries. This is real discrimination which can be felt in everyday life. The policy is to not discriminate, but only in offices. When it comes to the parties, there they can easily be discriminated. This is the hush treatment that everyone can feel, but no one can report. Because how can you report for a person who is not inviting you over a dinner party? That is the host's personal choice. LGBT is not a new community. There is gay and lesbians in our novels for a very long time. When LGBT is the topic, the first writer who comes to my mind is D.S. Lawrence. His novels were an open challenge to the society of his era. He came forward and gave us characters like George and Cyril of The White Peacock and Rupert and Gerald in Women in Love. Although Lawrence never accepted himself as gay or heterosexual, his character speaks louder than his life. Literature works for this community from the very starting of their existence. But when it comes to accepting this community, society boycotts that literature too. So, the discouragement somehow successfully delayed the rights of LGBTQ. But they constantly fought for themselves and are still fighting. Their constant fight and acceptance for their sexual orientation led to many laws. The laws are to protect them and also give them certain rights. Many articles are there for the readers, but when it comes to applying them, many of us fail. Not only those who are a common man, also those who are law protectors. In an article, a complaint against Delhi police is mentioned, in which the victim is being bullied by the police because he hugged a transgender friend. That article is introspection in itself. To quote that article, when the system and society fail to even properly acknowledge the existence of its marginalized citizens and continually denies them their rights, it is difficult to deny that pure pacifism has become rather futile. It must be remembered that while the Delhi police may wave rainbow flags at pride, they have blood in their hands and contempt in their mouths. Unquote. A natural process of living includes love for everyone. But when it comes to sexual orientation, there are lots of if and buts included. No one knows who first decided that what should be the limitation of falling in love. But as per history is concerned, there are many mentions of LGBT people. They were insignificant posts and were enjoying power and luxury. For example, in Mughal Kal, the transgenders were supposed to be the guard of the harem. So the most important queens and other ladies of the palace were depending on the transgenders for their safety. Some people give the argument that they were transgenders, so were incapable of having physical relation with the ladies. To see this in another way, in that era, everyone was allotted their jobs as per their capacity and the need of the society. The transgenders were strong enough to protect the ladies, and there was no other suitable job that uses their power to its fullest. That was one of the reasons that they were used as the bridge between men and women. To show their power, there are many pieces of research done. In one of them, it is mentioned that a perusal of contemporary sources reflects that eunuch used to perform administrative, religious, and other duties. Sometimes the nature of the duty was the similar to the ones usually undertaken by important nobles. The point here is if we try to make use of human power, we can, but we have to stop being biased and radical. If they were useful at that time, they must be useful nowadays. Many kings and queens had sexually different orientations. They accepted their orientation, but again, not publicly. There are mentions of queens who confided in ladies. In the modern world, they are coming forward and accepting what they are. But once they accept themselves, from there, their main problem starts. Being gay or lesbian, they have a certain persona. This persona is different from others. When I am talking about different from others, it's sometimes about dressing, a certain way of walking, and also a style of speaking. It is different from others, which makes others clear that they have a different sexual orientation. But this is not correct about everyone of this community. Some are the same as what we believe is normal. So anything that is not according to our standard is not normal for most of us. When it comes to their dressing style, they dress themselves according to their mental comfort. Some male tries to dress as female and vice versa. That should be okay. But no, there is a history of dressing code too. How could a person's achievement be deciphered by their dressing style? Where European dress, a clear marker of gender, was enforced by missionary, we find another complicated history of both gender identity and resistance. Biblical interpretation made it illegal for a woman to wear pants or a man to adopt female dress. And sensationalized public trials warned against deviants, but also made such martyrs and heroes popular. Joan of Arc was one example, and the chilling origins of the word fagot include a stick of wood used in public burnings of gay men. Despite the risk of defying several legal codes, cross dressing flourished in early modern Europe and America. Nowadays, the dressing style is getting more and more unisexual, but it is limited to the high society and rich people. There, They also feel alone among friends and families. There is lack of acceptance. No one wants to show the child of themselves who is from the LGBTQ community. In Hollywood, there are lots of actors and workers who came forward as the member of this community. Some are not the member of the community but supports them anyway. The cinema and literature are the most important wheels upon which the bus of society runs. If the cinema is supporting, then there are chances of their early end of discrimination. When Lihaf, a short story by Ismat Chugtai, written in 1942, was published, there was roar of protests. Everyone was screaming that the story is a patch on the dignity of society. She also got in trouble because she had to fight a case for not apologizing for the obscenity of the story. The irony is, years later, in 1996, Deepa Mehta also shared the same fate. So there are lots of examples, there are lots of ban and everything that we are imposing on them, and we believe that we are making them normal. There are lots of bans and everything about how, whom, and what should we do about love. But in my personal opinion, to live and to love is what humanity is all about. It should be preferable to explore what is someone's sexual orientation. Thereafter, the rules and regulations and the pyramid of do's and don'ts should be constructed. To make myself heard, I want to end my presentation by quoting Bill Konisberg. You can be anything you want, but when you go against who you are inside, it doesn't feel good. Thank you.
Thank you, Smriti. It was indeed a thoughtful presentation, I would say.
Thank
Something
you.
very relevant in our contemporary times, especially a discipline within gender studies, which does really need more research and more representation. Thank you, Smriti. Is there anyone who would like to ask a
Yeah,
question?
I have one question. I have one question to Smriti.
Yes.
Like you have given an excellent representation of the LGBTQ reality that they negotiate in their day-to-day life. I have two questions. In fact, the first one is that John Stuart Mill, in his seminal writing on liberty, has extensively talked about the importance of having a zone of seclusion, the zone of seclusion through which two intimate bodies can act, perform, and orient themselves. So, seen in the present context, when Article 15 and Article 14 actually provide the fundamental right to the people to live a dignified life, irrespective of their sexual orientations, and to cohabit together, how you are going to bring your debate with your own critical reflexive standpoint. And my second question to you is that in most of the academia, pertaining to the queer topography, we mainly talk about the gays, the lesbian, and the transgender. What about the standpoint of bisexual, pansexual, asexual, who are being further queered and closeted within the queer ecosystem in which their standpoint gets muffled and throttled in their day to day life? And also, why we don't bring out the critical reflexivity of the village spaces where queer bodies are alienated further and they might get killed also, but we don't even actually come across with the problematic of the different kind of dimensional aspect that operate within these various ecosystems. So I would like to know your opinion and your thoughts about it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, to answer both of the questions, uh, my personal opinion is that law and society, they are two different things. Some laws, they are there for them LGBT community, but it is not the law which should be imposed. As per my opinion, I believe that there is a different society which is not following the law, but which is somehow trying to hush that you are a lesbian or you are different. It is not only lesbian or gay, it is about the whole umbrella LGBTQ plus. The society is treating them as a disease. So I think that the law is there, but the society, it should work for them. we should come forward and we should talk to them like a normal, like a common man or woman. We should not see them as a different, as we should invite them in our parties. We should talk to them as we talk to a common man or a woman. This is what a society can do. And other thing, if we see something happening, then we should not only report to the police, we should also interfere in that matter. If someone is harassing lesbian, gay, or any transgender, anyone, then we should come forward. We should do the things which at that moment, to protect them. We should interfere in that fight, or you can say in that harassment. We can come forward. Doesn't matter what we are, from LGBT community or not, but we should interfere then, uh, at that point, at the same point where the harassing is going on.
Okay, thank you, Smriti, and thank you, Victor, for the question. I hope there is no one else who would like to make a remark.
Yeah, I'd like to remark Smriti again because I also identify myself in this similar LGBTQ trajectory, and I actually feel the alienations and the loneliness that is being perpetrated onto me, not just by the law, but also from the society, but also from the people within the queer community, where a set of postmodernist discourse that truth is always partial, you have to be like this and you have to be like that, is also being judged onto us and to heap onto us. So I feel that we actually need a collective consciousness which appreciate and which value the different discourses that is operating in the complexities of the socio-psychic spaces in India. We can actually do, like being a sensitized individual, we can actually at least condemn the person who is propagating his phobic attitude, but I think it will take a long time, because knowing that we have steered the entire socio-cultural fabrics of India, acceptance is coming, but it will take a long time, and we should keep on problematizing it again and again to make ourselves heard more and more. So that's what my take is. Yeah, thanks a lot, Smith.
Yes, Victor.
uh, and yes, I also want to say something, that it is us, we should change ourselves. If each and everyone will change, if we will change, then the society, we are the society. I never discriminate, and I believe that all whom I meet, I want to discuss them, that do not discriminate, and treat them as common as normal person. So we are society. We should be there for them.
Yes. Thank you, Smriti.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everyone. So we have come to the end of this technical session. Thank you to all the paper presenters for the wonderful papers that were read and presented today. Wish you all the best for all the research work. And thank you to all the other participants who were also here. Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Donna ma'am. Thank you for handling this session wonderfully. I also thank all the participants for presenting their paper. Once again, thank you everyone. Have a great time ahead. So, this is the end of this session.